Hi everyone, this is James, and I'm about to conduct the monthly reading, the monthly Kipper-Cast reading for October 2025 for my Kipper Cards by Category series. If this is your first time here, I'd like to say welcome, and if you're a returning viewer and subscriber, I'd like to say thank you so much for circling back and for supporting the work that goes into the channel. Okay, so as you can see, we have the Kipper deck on the table that I'm going to be working with. And once again, I'm working with my own Kipper deck, which is the Mitchell Kipper. And before we get into it, I want to say thank you to those of you who have invested into the deck by purchasing a copy. I am so over the moon that some of you have liked the deck so much that you wanted to have it as part of your personal collection. It's a little surreal to see people reach out to you either through DMs on social media or emails showing me pictures of their copies of the deck. It just blows my mind, and it just brings a smile to my face. So once again, I want to say thank you to those of you who expressed interest and also purchased a copy of the deck. It means the world to me. Okay, as you can see, we have the main person 1 and main person 2 cards on the table. I pre-selected them from the deck before turning on the camera, and the reason being is because I'm once again working with the mini Tableau. So if you're familiar with working with a grand Tableau, you will know that the grand Tableau consists of the entire deck. You use all 36 cards in the deck, and so I wanted to come up with a variation, a smaller variation on that. So I decided to split that in half, and my mini Tableau consists of 18 cards, but I want these 2 cards to show up in the reading, and the only way to guarantee that they would show up is to pre-select them. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the remainder of the deck, we're going to shuffle it, and we're going to randomly draw 16 cards. So I'm going to do that now. Alright, and now on the table you will see the 16 cards that were randomly selected from the deck. So now we're going to take our significator cards, main person 1 and main person 2, and we're going to put them in with these 16 cards. So I'm just going to randomly put them somewhere in the deck. So now they're all included. So now we're going to once again shuffle the cards. We're going to lay them out in the mini Tableau. Alright, the cards have been laid out in the mini Tableau design, and so the way it works is I have 3 rows of 5 cards and then a row of 3 at the bottom. So the first 15 cards are actually the Tableau, and then the bottom 3 cards are going to be what I call either the bottom line. This is like bottom lining the situation or situations being shown, or offer a final summation or a final piece of advice. That's how I'm going to choose to look at that. And so first let me just say that if you hear some background noise, I tried to delay the filming of the video until the people out in the neighborhood are doing their yard work. So I'm just going to move on because it's been a while and I wanted to get this video done in a timely manner. Okay. Oh, and so first let me say for the record, I am actually filming this video on October the 1st, 2025, the first day of October. Okay. So the way it works is that I look for the heart of the matter or the central issue or the focus. So now remember, this is a monthly reading. So the intention is that we're looking at possible scenarios, situations, experiences that could unfold over the course of the month, right? And this could be either personally, which means that it might be of personal resonance to you as an individual viewer, or it's going to be something that's going to be maybe a shared collective experience, right? I won't know until I turn over the cards which way things are going to go. Okay, so here is the heart of the matter, the central issue card. And so here for the month of October, we have the change card. Okay, so change represents a change in circumstances. So now if you notice in my Kipper deck, I have color-coded the borders of the cards to indicate what category within the Kipper deck system this type of card is. So the green cards are movement cards, and they offer a directional cue. In the case of change, it's going to be interesting to note this card here on the left and this card here on the right, because the change card indicates there's a change in movement from whatever this card is towards this card. But at the heart of the matter, just the card by itself, it represents a change in circumstances. Now, one of the things it could mean, too, for people is that this can represent a change of house, moving house. So it would be interesting to see if the house card actually shows up and where in relationship to the change card does it show up. But again, the root meaning of the change card represents a change in circumstances, right? So it just represents, dealing with changing circumstances throughout the month of October. Okay, once we establish what the central issue card is, we're going to move to this card here. I call this the opening or the trigger card. So this would be the jumping off point for the month, or what is prompting the need for the reading. Like, why are we asking for a reading to be done at this time? Okay, so this card here is the prison card. Okay, so prison has a red border, so this is a stop card. Prison is a card that can talk about blocks, challenges, limitations, restrictions, things like that. Now, it could literally mean a situation dealing with someone who's in prison or in some sort of confinement, a sense of isolation. I tend to think of prison as the solitary confinement card, right? So it could be any situation or experience where a person is either literally in a sense of isolation, like literally isolated from other people, or experiencing a sense of isolation from others, right? So is that. Now in traditional Kipper cartomancy, the prison can also represent a tall building of any kind, and then surrounding cards might describe what type of building, right? In my experience, this can represent hospitals in particular. So, but we're thinking about things like prison, actual prisons, the prison system, hospitals, any space where people can experience isolation. So now this could also be, like maybe seeking alone time, a withdrawal period, cutting yourself off from other people, things like that. But my chief meaning for it, when it comes up, it can represent blocks, challenges, limitations, and restrictions, right? Okay. And then we're going to move from here to the closing card in the tableau. Now remember, these three bottom cards are going to be offering final advice. So this would be the opening and the closing of the tableau. So this would be more towards maybe how the month would end. And here we have main person 2. So now if we mirror the cards, meaning looking at the corners, here we have maybe a sense of limitation or restriction, for a woman. And the way that I'm going to be reading the tableau is I'm going to be looking at the significator cards and where they are placed and what's around them, and then maybe looking at them as jointly, so as individuals. So this would be for women who are watching the video, and wherever the main person 1 card turns up, that would be for men watching the video. And then maybe if there's a relationship dynamic that I see in the cards, putting them together and coming up with a mutual shared story. Okay, so now what we have here is an interesting thing, because now she's facing all these cards. So for any women watching the video, this might be opening up for experiences for the month ahead for you because you are facing all the cards, right? So this would be about your future. Now, this would be what we call the present column here, and this would be your line of thinking, right? This would be immediate thoughts and maybe thoughts that are maybe more distant kind of thing, but this would represent your present experience and your thinking, especially this card here. And then we have, like I said, this is called line of sight, so this would be an interesting row to look at. Okay, so the chief meaning of the main person 2 card is that it represents a female querent, seeker, that kind of thing. So other cards might describe her more fully, but that's the chief meaning of the card. So now at this point, we're going to go ahead now and turn over all the other cards. Alright, so we have all the cards turned over. And the first thing that got my attention as I was turning the cards over is that here we have main person 2. And we have them knighting to each other. So knighting is a process where you can go over 1, down 2, or in this particular case of main person 2, up 2, over 1. Right? So we have an individual experience with the main person 2, and then we have a brief looking ahead for the main person 1. So he's different in terms of her. Then he has a lot of cards behind him. So now this could be read a couple of ways. Number 1, this could be bringing in past experiences from maybe perhaps the month before, September, into October. I call it like the spillover effect, right? So still dealing with past or prior issues, or that dealing with a lot of challenges because when a card has, in this particular case, a significator card has cards behind him or her, that represents what we call inauspicious placement, and can represent, like over the course of the month, a person having a lot of challenge. So there's going to be lots of challenges for men over the course of the month versus women because she has no cards behind her, right? And also, too, he has a lot of cards beneath him. So the difference between him and her in this regard is that cards beneath him represents things that he's trying to get under his control, whereas she has 2 rows of cards above her. So this would be situations that may be weighing on her just by the visual, right? Now, in terms of a possible relationship dynamic with the main person 1 on top, in the top row, this could be like there may be an aspect of a relationship in which a male is trying to have influence or control over a woman. And again, that's just based on visual placement of the cards. Okay, but it's very interesting that they knight to each other, so there may be an individual experience, but also, like I said, a shared experience. Okay, so let's take a look at the main person 2. I'll start with ladies first. So if you're a woman watching this, some of this might resonate with you. And at this point, let me say this. When we're doing general readings, not everything is going to relate to every single viewer. So I'm going to just invite you to take whatever does resonate with you and just simply leave what doesn't. Okay? So now, let's take a look at her present column. So above her is the Fatality card. So Fatality is a card that can represent endings, completion, conclusion, transition, right? And that would make sense with the Change card. Remember now, at the heart of the matter, for the man and the woman, is a change in circumstances. So for her, if this is above her in her mind, this could be the idea of she's thinking about bringing things to a state of closure, completion, ending, right? So she may be thinking this is the month to get some things done, and done once and for all, right? Going with the idea that the Fatality card can actually represent transition. So So there is that. Now, if we go with the literal, because we have grief and adversity above the fatality card, grief and adversity is a card that can represent facing adverse conditions, challenges, things like that. It can also represent grieving as a process or getting grief, right? So it could be like someone is actually dealing with the grief around loss, fatality, right? So it could be if a person had somebody transition close to them, they're still in that process, right? In this present, still processing that. Now, if we knight the cards, this could be maybe someone who has lost a significant partner or a significant other, main person two. Main person two, I mean main person one here, you know, and then dealing with that. Right, but this card, grief and adversity, can represent, just like the prison card, it can represent limitations and restrictions because of the wall in the image. Limitations, restrictions, hitting a block. It's a card that chiefly talks about stress, right? So if it's not about the actual grieving process or surrounding a transition of a significant person in one's life, then this could just be there's a lot of stress involved in bringing something to a state of completion or conclusion. And then the grief and adversity card is a red bordered card, which means it's a stop card, right? So just the idea that it comes from that category can represent bringing something to a state of completion or conclusion, but there may be a sense of stress around that. So that's what I would say about the present column here. So now we're going to take a look at the line of sight row here. So now she is facing good news. Good news. Sad news. And sad news is a card that talks about disappointment, upset. It can literally represent receiving sad news, right? So it can represent sadness, upset, disappointment. She's facing it, right? So this would be in the immediate future. It could be representing receiving news that's upsetting, sad, disappointing, or concerning, right? Now, the yellow border would indicate it's cause and effect card. So now we have a little bit of a slight change or nuance to the story, right? I tend to look at Kipper as providing story and storylines. So the way the cause and effect card works is that behind the card here is the cause, right? So the woman could also be a cause for something upsetting, something of a sad nature, or something disappointing. And then this card here in the front, young lady, would be what's affected by it. So it's very interesting. It reminds me of last month's Tableau where we had a similar dynamic. I believe main person 2 and young lady showed up in close proximity to each other, right? So here, if this is the case, then we have a relationship possibly between a woman and young lady would represent somebody who's younger than her. So if it's familial, we don't have home and family as context, but if it's familial, this could be a younger sister, could be a daughter, could be a female cousin, somebody younger than her, could also be a best friend or a girlfriend, something of that nature. So there may be some upset, some disappointment, some sadness between two women, one older than the other. But it's going to have more of an effect on the younger lady than it would be for main person 2 because she is the cause of it. Right, so there's two ways of reading this. Could be being on the receiving end because she's facing it, sad news, or being the cause of sad news between herself and a younger woman. Again, either familial or relational, if it's like best friend, girlfriend, that kind of thing. Right, now, another meaning for young lady, because she has a dual meaning, and I should say too, I haven't said it yet, but she has a purple border, so that represents a person card in the deck. So if she's not a person, then she can represent things like beauty, creativity, fun. So if we go back here with the idea that maybe there is a woman who is in a process of grieving a loss, possibly of a significant other, then this would make sense. Then she's upset, sad, disappointed, and then it's going to have an effect on her sense of possible creativity if she's a creative person, or maybe just having fun in life, right? There's a period of time, if you're grieving, then it robs you of the ability to have fun in life for a time, right? So it could be that as well. So coming further out, then we have Hope Big Water, another stop card. And Hope Big Water is a card that talks about our dreams, our hopes, our wishes, right? So it could be like the sad news is going to continue over into this card, right? Or it could be that a woman is thinking about, if she's going through a sense of change, right? Time of transition, and it involves completing something and stress around that, or grieving a loss, then it may lead to the re-examination of her life. What is she hoping for at this point? What is she dreaming for at this point? Right? It could also be the hope or the wish for more stability and security. That would be the symbol of the anchor. The anchor can represent stability and security. This is also a spiritual card. So it could be getting to look at life maybe in a more spiritual lens or context. And then here we have military person at the end of the line. So now military person can represent a person, and it can also represent a person who is in either the military or some form of law enforcement, right? Because it usually represents following the rules, following regulations, things like that. I'm going to go with the more secondary meaning of this card, in this particular case with Hope Big Water being next to it, and it would be this. This is a card about discipline. So it could be like when it comes to one's hopes, wishes, or dreams, having the discipline to carry them out, right? Now, it could also be, if we mirror the cards, meaning military person is mirrored to main person 2, if we go with the possibility that there's an effect on a younger lady in terms of a relationship, right? And now remember, she may be on the receiving end of sad news, meaning upset, disappointment, sadness. Then it could be as a result of main person 2 being quite the disciplinarian, because military person, can be about discipline, right? So this would be describing somebody who is very disciplined, regimented, things like that. And strict, that's another word for this card. So it could be in the course of this relationship, somebody who's coming across strict and as a disciplinarian, right? And that would be, again, if it's relational. If it's not, then it would be more for main person 2 as she's moving through this experience over the course of the month, maybe practicing a greater sense of discipline with herself when it comes to the idea of whatever it is that she's hoping for, wishing for, or wanting to attain as a goal. That's another aspect of this card, is about goal attainment, right? So that's what I'm seeing with the line here. And it may be difficult here because we have 2 stop cards, and whenever there are stop cards in a row, a successive row, then it would be like a gradual progression, something slowing down. Remember, we also had the opening of prison, and we have prison and grief and adversity mirroring each other, this idea of limitation, restriction, hitting a wall, that kind of thing. But these cards would indicate something that's not progressing maybe as fast as we would like, right? So that's what I want to say about this row with her. And I may come back to some aspect. Oh, the other thing, let me just touch on this. So she also knights to change, if you come up 1 and over 2. So the change really is going to have an effect on her. It could be a matter of, like, if this is where she's at presently, the sense of loss and grieving, then it could be how that changes circumstances for her, or what does she need to change, right? And we're going to come back more to this because we need to talk about the cards surrounding change. But that's what I want to say about main person 2, so that might resonate with any women who are watching in particular. So now let's take a look at main person 1. This would be for any men watching or those who identify as male. So let me start with line of sight. So he is looking at grief and adversity, not much here in terms of the future, right? So this would be being on the receiving end of grief or being on the receiving end of stress. So moving towards a stressful situation, or being on the end of getting grief from other people. And it could be, now remember, getting grief from, maybe this would be getting grief from a woman, because he knights to main person 2 in particular. But how dealing with the stresses of experiences over the course of the month, right? And then we have the cards behind him. So now remember, these could either be prior events that are playing a role or a part in how the month unfolds for him, or that in auspicious placement, these are challenges. Like he's facing a challenge here. But the difference here is that he's willing to face this, right? Whereas this might be more problematic because he's not facing them. So again, we have prison here, this sense of isolation or restriction. And then next to that, we have expectation. So now expectation is a cause and effect card, much like sad news. And so here we have this card talking about needs, wants, and desires. And so the card that the woman in the image is facing would be what is affected by the expectation. This is usually about waiting, looking ahead to the future. This card is known as 3 months patience, so it's interesting that it's behind him. If we talk about past or prior experiences, this could be dealing with events that have unfolded for the man over the course of the last 3 months, yeah? Because it's behind him. And then the card behind expectation would be the cause. So win lots is a card of abundance, but it also talks about a lot of something, right? So it could just be there's a lot of needs, a lot of wants, a lot of desires, or that the man has a lot of expectations or a lot of anticipation for what's ahead. Another possibility for the win lots card for me is that it can represent, due to the imagery, it can represent gambling. So this could be, a gamble, taking chances. So it could be that there is a need, a desire to take a chance on a situation. It could also be, in the literal sense, a need, a desire to strike it rich, quote unquote, right? So this is a card of increase. So this could be about abundance, increase, prosperity, wealth, things of that nature, because this card can represent financial abundance, right? But it could also be, if we go with the idea about taking a chance, this could be that the man needs to take a chance on himself, but moving forward, dealing with limitations or restrictions or blocks, right? Because this could be about hitting a wall. Or that if he wants to change, remember, this is true for him too, change is at the heart of the matter. If he wants something to change, then he has to be willing to face challenges, blocks, obstacles, right? So now I'm looking at expectation and prison, and so if we have need, want, desire here, and it's moving this way in terms of effect, then this could be, about being alone. I'm looking at this more as like a state of independence, right? So that could also be true. Now what I'm noting here is that he also knights to false person, and so here we have a bit of a challenging situation for him, because false person doesn't necessarily mean a person per se, even though person is on the card. This usually can represent something that is wrong, something that is bad, some kind of mistake, or a situation that's just off, right? And so it could be, since it knights to him, this could either be a situation, prior experience, or a challenge that he's dealing with the idea of, a mistake being made, or something being bad or wrong, or something being off. Now, it could also describe him, because when false person is connected to a person card, it can represent someone who is insincere or even dishonest, right? And if you go with the image here, we have a woman who is wearing a mask, right? So it's about like concealing something, hiding something, or some aspect of self, you know. But it could also be like if something is wrong, something is bad, something is off, then this card would suggest, since it knights to main person 2, what is his role in it, right? Because I tend to look at the false person card as actors and actresses, right? And they play a role or a part in a production, whether it's a TV show, movie, play, right? They are playing a role or a part, right? So what would his role or part be in that situation, right? Now, false person, again, if you note yellow border, is a cause and effect card. We have a lot of cause and effect cards here on the table for this reading this month. And so the way it works here is that what is behind the woman in the image of false person is what's being concealed, what's being hidden. So there's some change of circumstances, right, that's not being presented honestly, right? And then the card in front would be what effect is that going to have? And here we have journey. So journey is a card that talks about movement, right? We have 2 movement cards in between or flanking the cause and effect card, I should say, right? So there's something that's going to affect movement or progress, right? Journey could be a card that talks about progress, moving forward, advancement of some kind. So there's something that's going to be affecting that. Now, for me, journey is also a card, much like Hope Big Water, that talks about something overseas or something foreign due to the ship and the water in the image. And here we have a beach with the ocean in the background. So this card can sometimes talk about things that are happening abroad or foreign. So we may have something having to do with something overseas or international waters or something of an international nature, right? That's being affected by whatever the change in circumstances are. But it's not being presented either sincerely or honestly, right? And then there may be a man who's attached to that, right? And it could be as a result, if it's uncovered or discovered, then the man, that would make sense as to why the man is going to be receiving grief, right? So that's what I'm seeing here. Now, if I move to this, from this row to this row, because we've already looked at the top and the bottom row, in the middle row. Okay, so now we have change. Remember, change is a movement card and it has a directional cue. Okay, so the directional cue, again, remember now, false person would be the direction. We're moving away from this towards this, and I like this in this regard. So we're moving away from dishonesty, insincerity, keeping things hidden or concealed, and more towards great fortune. Great fortune is the best card in the Kipper deck, right? It represents blessings, it represents abundance, it represents fortune, right? And so it could represent abundance in terms of the harvest here, the cornucopia, so that's a symbol of abundance, and we have the goddess Fortuna in the image. So we're moving away from this towards this. I think this is great, right? And great fortune is such a great card. It tends to outshine any challenging cards around it, and the reason why I'm saying that is because fatality is next to it, which would be a challenging card, right? So now for a man, this could be about him getting his sense of great fortune under control. Again, this would be about blessings, abundance, getting that under control because it's underneath him. But it's about a change in fortune, right? How do we change our fortune, right? And again, the only way to change that could be for the man is taking a look at his role or his part in his situation, right? Because very close to him we have 2 abundance card, 2 cards that indicate fortune, right? So let's say he took a chance on something and it didn't work out, then he would have to take, like, what's my role and my part in that? And that would probably be the first step to changing his fortune. Now, I will also say that great fortune is known as the trump card in the deck, and so I'm going with that in terms of shared experience, right? Especially here in the United States and maybe in some places abroad, because remember, we have Hope Big Water and Journey, foreign interest, international waters, things taking place overseas, right? So here we have, if I go with the metaphor of Trump, then this could be the president himself, and maybe some things that he is in the process of changing, right? But there's this issue of sincerity, this issue of honesty, that kind of thing. And if things are going to change for the better, this would be a change for the better, then we need to move away from this, right? And remember now, this knight's to him too. So just wanted to throw that out there briefly. And of course, with the shipping, the ship on the journey card, I tend to look at this as shipping or shipments. So this could be something maybe related to tariffs, especially things that are imported, right? Imported from abroad, and how that might be playing a role or a part in that. And then here we would have military person. This would be the military in and of itself, right? Law enforcement. So there may be something having to do with that as well. And when I see journey and military person together, I tend to look at this as, military deployment, service people being sent or deployed overseas in some shape, form, or fashion. Right, and then that would make sense with prison, because prison could also represent this state of isolation, like they're being sent in a place where they would be kind of maybe cut off or isolated from other Americans, perhaps. Right, so there's that. Now we have an interesting thing going on here with prison and military person. This might be things having to do with the prison system, incarceration, right? Because here we have law enforcement, and this could literally mean the prison system. Or maybe even people being detained. And this would make sense too if we're talking about foreigners, possibly. Then this would be maybe detainment of foreigners, and the rules, regulations being strict, being the disciplinarian, or having law enforcement involved. So there may be things having to do with ICE, or even the National Guard in some places. I don't even know if that's still a thing that's going on these days, but maybe more ICE. Right, and so I'm taking a look at this row if there's anything else I want to say. Here, that's what I'm feeling inclined in the moment. Okay, so now let's take a look at the columns next and see if there's anything more I want to say about the columns. I already touched on this one pretty much. Here we have expectation, false person, hope, and big water. So here we have need, want, desire. And then here we have hopes, wishes, and dreams. And then we have the challenging card in the middle. So here we might suggest, the idea here, if we have needs, wants, desires, hopes, wishes, and dreams, what is our role in that? What is our part in that and making that happen? Right, with the movement card, how can we see some progression, advancement, moving forward of our needs, wants, desires, and our hopes, wishes, and dreams? Or that maybe people are keeping a secret or hidden their needs, wants, desires, or their hopes, wishes, and dreams. So that's what I'm seeing here. Here, if we go with the idea that the young lady is a person, then right above her on her mind is a change in circumstances, right? And then win-lots would be, how can she change things for the better, for herself possibly, right? Or that she's going to be dealing with an increase in a change in circumstances. So maybe a change on multiple fronts. All right, and here, like I said, here we have a man who's getting under control, maybe a sense of abundance, or, a change in fortune, or a change in luck, or a change in circumstances for him for the better. But also maybe needing to deal with some sense of sadness, disappointment that's underlying that, right? This would be more of an emotional kind of influence or an undercurrent. And now I'm noticing here that he knights to not only main person too, if we knight this way, but he also knights to young lady. So we might have a dynamic with three people. I'm noticing a triangle. So the triangle could represent triangulation, right? So we have a situation with two people and the possibility of it involving a third party, or that there's an actual triangle between three people, a man and two women, right? And it would be more that these two are on the same level, white bordered cards, so they would probably be a couple, and then this would be the third wheel, or the third axis, so to speak, the third party. And what might make it worse is that if there was a relationship between the two women, right? Because now remember, they have sad news between them, upset, disappointment, sadness, right? And that would make sense with the insincerity or the dishonesty here. So that's what I'm seeing with these cards here. So now let's take a look at the final three cards and wrap this up in terms of a piece of final advice, or the bottom line, or a summation. So if we go with the idea that this is the bottom line, here we have the work occupation card. So this can represent something having to do with job and employment, first and foremost. It could also be about working with your hands, so it could be a specific type of industry or a specific type of work. So this would be working with your hands. In the image I have a physical laborer, a construction worker. So this could be literally working in construction, again working with your hands, doing something physical. It can represent physical or manual labor. Now, it could also be work and effort if we go more metaphorical. And as I was talking about that, I noticed that it knights to the change card. So this could be a change in circumstances. It could be one that has to do with work, right? Or constructing something, building something up. So there's a change in circumstances with that. So somebody could literally be changing jobs, or changing employment status, or something of that nature, or building something from the ground up in terms of work occupation. This card can also represent hobbies. But if it represents work in terms of work or effort, it would be about changing, creating change. That whatever change, heart of the matter, that we want to experience, change in circumstances, bottom line is it may require some work or effort, right? Now the other thing that's coming to me is about change. This could be about, rebuilding one's life, right? Construction would indicate maybe a sense of deconstruction and then reconstruction, right? So the idea about constructing or reconstructing your life. Okay, and then we move to a long road. So this is a movement card, green border. Now a long road can represent one's path and direction in life. The road symbolizes that, right? But this card is much like expectation in terms of a waiting period. It has a time period involved of 1 to 2 years. We call it 1 to 2 years patience, whereas expectation is 3 months patience. Right? So this is a longer period of time. So this is about work or effort, down the road or down the line. So it could be if something is implemented or put into place this month, you might not see immediate results from that work. It's something that's going to be taking place over a period of time, down the road, down the way. Right? And then the final card here, a living room. Living room is a card that talks about space. It talks about privacy, something of an intimate nature. So what I love about it, it kind of mirrors prison, right? Remember now, prison is a card about isolation, withdrawal, being alone, solitary confinement, and we have a similar thing here. Right, now if I mirror the cards work, occupation, and living room, and then take into account that it also mirrors prison, then here we have the idea of maybe a tall building. Remember, that's one of the meanings of this card. And then this would be a smaller space within that tall building. And if we throw in work, occupation in that, then this could be an office in a building, an office building that one works in. Or it could literally be the construction of a building, right? And it could be, again, office buildings or even living spaces, right? If this is a living room, then this would be an apartment building, but it could be something that's being constructed over time. So this may have to do with some sort of real estate or property thing, and laying the foundation or laying the groundwork for that to unfold over a period of time. But now there may also be something about keeping something to oneself, prison, living room. So it could be if you are working on changing your life, rebuilding your life, reconstructing your life. The message here might be you might want to be selective as to who you share that info with, right? Or there may be aspects of it that you can't share immediately for a particular reason or reasons. So that's what I'm seeing with the cards, and I'm going to wrap up there. So this has been the Kipper-Cast for the month of October 2025. If you made it to this point in the video with me, thank you so much for giving me the gift of your time. I do so greatly appreciate it. And as I wrap up, again, I want to thank those of you who took the time to invest in a copy of the Mitchell Kipper. I'll hold the title card up again for those of you who are here for the first time. It means the world to me, as I said earlier, that you would want to have my deck in your personal collection. And I hope if you have it that you're using it and that you are getting a lot out of playing with the cards, right? I'm all about having fun with our cartomancy decks, no matter what deck you're working with, whether it's mine or someone else's, that you are having fun with it. And so on that note, again, thank you for sharing this time with me, and I look forward to seeing you here in this space for the Kipper-Cast for November 2025. So until then, I hope that you have a great month, and take care.